Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. Hello. I've had quite an interesting morning. I think interesting can be the only way to describe it. What my original plan for today's podcast was to find a few people that had got a vast amount of planets retrograde, because at this precise moment in time, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto are all retrograde. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to be talking today about people that have got wads of retrograde planets in their chart? What's their life like for them? And I went to my little friends at astro.com, to the Astro databank search tool, and there weren't that many people that had what I'd asked for retrograde. There was some, but not a vast amount. And because obviously there's only certain amounts of time when those planets are all retrograde. I tried sticking in Mercury. I started off doing Mercury, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and then everything else all retrograde, and obviously there wasn't anything. Jimmy Page, who's a musician, turned up, but there was a sort of like a space in time, and it was the 1940s, something like 1940 something, 1946 something, and then boom, there was a gap, and it didn't happen again until the 1980s. Anyway, one of these people was on there, and I thought, well, I'll because I chose 3 charts, and I was going to do 3 charts today. And then I changed my mind. I thought, no, I'm just going to concentrate on this one person who was born more recently. They're born in 1984, because they themselves have Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto retrograde in their chart. And I thought, when I watched some videos of them talking, this particular person is what we call in the UK has a potty mouth, that they have a compulsion to swear. And the thing today is that if you have a social media account, you can near enough do whatever you like to a certain extent, and then you can't, sort of thing. So there's a certain amount that you can do online before eventually you're kicked off. And this particular person absolutely seems to enjoy that. I think they're a bit of a masochist. Anyway, so we're going to chat about her chart and the fact that a lot of things are retrograde, but also what we need to talk about is why and at what point. So they didn't start to get, inverted commas, famous on their TikTok account, I think they started with, in 1921. So let's talk about their chart. Let's talk about the fact that they've got a foul mouth. And it's okay occasionally to probably swear here or there. But I've also come to the conclusion that, and I don't get me wrong, I do occasionally swear. However, it's not a good use of your chart. Anyway, so I'll come on to their chart in a minute. But what I wanted to point out today is that if more people understood their own charts and became at peace with their natal chart, because they've gone through the whole heck of learning astrology and stuff, I'm sure their lives would be much better. I'm absolutely convinced of that point, that you don't need to go to see a shrink or a therapist or anything if you really throw yourself into understanding your own, not understanding everybody else's, but start at understanding your own chart and being compassionate towards what you have in there would, in my mind, save a lot of agony. And if more people, which they won't, so I don't even know why I'm saying this, but if it's possible for you yourself to understand your chart and equally what is happening for you astrologically right now with transits, okay, because that's what's going on at the minute, then your life will be much, much easier. Now, before I launch into this particular person's chart, I also want to say, and I think it's necessary, that too much stress and allowing yourself to just say what you want whenever you want is detrimental to your mental health. Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, there's a generation of people that have grown up with iPhones and the internet that have no idea what it was like before that was invented. Now, I'm ancient, okay, so I'm in my 60s. I've lived, thankfully, a long time, long enough to know what life was like before or after the internet. And I'm certainly not going to be sitting here saying that the internet is a bad thing, because it isn't. What I liked about the internet when it was invented was that I could communicate with people in other countries. I absolutely love the concept of being able to communicate with someone using that valuable resource of the internet, whatever you want to call it, and being able to communicate with people in other countries. I love that. Okay, so don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking the internet. What I do think is unhelpful is when people have a mental health issue, the internet allows them to be mentally ill with an audience. And from my perspective as an alternative therapist, I don't think that's good at all. I think when people are mentally unwell, their accounts, there's no way of doing it, but their accounts should be, you can't stop somebody's account, but if you have a friend or someone that you follow that is very obviously losing it, and I've spent a few hours this morning witnessing this woman and how she thinks she's this and she thinks she's that, and her opinion on this and her opinion on that. And obviously with her being American it's slightly different, but people in the UK don't quite do things like that. But I couldn't watch a whole of her videos. I watched a small segment of them and I was exhausted. Absolutely exhausted. So what is it about this particular person that's so exhausting? Now, their name is Alexandra Pierce. That's the name they were born. And she's born in California. Anyway, this particular lady lives in California, isn't short of a bob or two, has apparently been to university, learned different languages, can speak a bit of, I can't remember if it was Cantonese or Mandarin that she learned, has a qualification in business studies, but now she makes her money from selling tat. I mean, I've worked in jewellery, this lady's selling plated tat, and I don't know how much money she makes from selling that. I don't think that's where the majority of her finances comes from anyway. And she has a Scorpio ascendant, and as I say, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all in retrograde, all on the left-hand side of her chart. And the only planet that isn't retrograde on the left-hand side of her chart, because she's got a seesaw chart, is her moon. And her moon is hidden in the 12th, conjunct to Saturn retrograde, conjunct to Pluto, which is also retrograde. And she loves what she does. Okay, she gets an enormous kick out of it, I would presume, otherwise she'd stop doing it. Now, I was quite blown away actually by what she does. I don't come across people like that. So my one and only social media account, I've got two actually. I've got YouTube and I have Instagram, and my settings are what's the word I want to use? The settings I have on there restrict what I see and what I experience to mostly peaceful, loving stuff. Okay, I make it a point of not following accounts for people like this particular lady. Myself, I would end up feeling very ill, and I can't believe that she lives a healthy life. She certainly doesn't live a healthy, mentally healthy life. So Scorpio ascendant, moon in Scorpio, born on a full moon, sun in Taurus, and so we're going to get a lot of switching between one and the other. And then I was astounded to read that she'd given birth, having watched a number of her rants, because she makes her living ranting, that she'd actually given birth, and I think she'd had IVF to be able to conceive. And I just thought, why have you given birth? Your child is going to grow up listening to your potty mouth. I feel quite sorry for the child, but we'll come to the child's chart in a minute. So we've got a Scorpio ascendant. Now, Scorpio ascendant people very, very rarely have a social media account. And when you watch, when I was watching her videos, you can see she's looking at herself. She's you know, that thing that people do when they look at themselves in the mirror, sort of like that, sort of doing this sort of kissy sort of face, and then she even has a brush with her, and she actually brushes her hair while she's talking, and then flicks it, and you can tell that even though she thinks that there are people witnessing what she's doing, she's talking to herself. She is not talking to that audience that she says that she's gotten 1 million followers and stuff. And that's the disadvantage to social media and to the internet, that where you get people that have forgotten how to look at someone else and will use their devices to look at themselves. Now, I've seen numbers of people that do that, because the camera's always on for yourself when you're broadcasting, FaceTime or Zoom or whatever. You'll always see yourself as well. There aren't too many people I know that will broadcast and have their own cameras turned off. There are some, but not many. And in these rants that she has, she's looking at herself, and you wonder whether or not she actually likes herself, because the sun and moon are in opposition. So the moon is how we feel, and her moon is being tortured by, I'd use the word tortured actually, having watched what I watched this morning. I feel like I need to go and have a shower now. It's so awful. But having that moon conjunct Pluto, Saturn and Mars, and I tell you, I'm quite happy to share my opinion on what I think is in her chart, in the same way that she says that she's happy to give her opinion on things. However, you're not going to get me ranting. I have done a podcast once or twice where I have felt a little bit exacerbated about something astrological. But yeah, Scorpio ascendant, there are fewer people with Scorpio ascendant that will use social media, because if you remember, why was social media invented? Facebook was, inverted commas, invented so that whatever his chops was, who's invented, I can't remember his name now. Oh gosh, he's been going on for ages, and I know he's a Taurus. Mark Zuckerberg, when he started it, the idea, I think the story is something like he was at university and there was somewhere that he could meet lots of women. The idea was that you could hook up with someone. That was why it was originally constructed. But the concept behind social media, the principle behind it, is that we can then socialise with other people. Now, I also need to raise the point here, as someone who was born before the internet was invented, that social media isn't very social. A lot of people will know a lot about what other people do, like I've just learned, inverted commas, a lot about this particular person, but only what she's shared online. And there's a lot of editing in what she does. So I don't think what she portrays herself as being, I don't think for 1 minute that is who she is. But because she's got this masochistic tendency with the moon conjunct Pluto, and I know numbers of people that have that. If your moon is conjunct Pluto, please be aware of it. It's very, very easy for you to torment yourself, which might come across as, because there's somebody very close geographically to me that has that, and they torment themselves. They make out that other people are tormenting them, but actually they're tormenting themselves. But if you want an example of a chart where someone torments themselves and rants, etc., then this is certainly it. This is somebody that has an internal dialogue. And the unfortunate thing, and she says that if you don't like what I do, don't follow me. And after this episode, I won't be going anywhere near anything to do with her. But I think it's lovely in astrology that we can actually investigate ourselves and others to find out why are they the way they are. She ain't going to change. And the unfortunate thing for her as well is, I swear, if her Mercury was in Taurus, which it isn't, it's in Aries, I would expect her not to have this potty mouth that she does have. But the sun and moon in opposition, so the sun is who we are and the moon is how we feel. So she hasn't got a clue how she feels. All she can feel is the side effects of that conjunction with her moon to Saturn and Pluto. So the emotions are fixed, so they're not mutable. She hasn't got a moon that goes woo. She's got a moon that goes torment yourself a little bit more, torment yourself a little bit more. We'll look at the baby's chart in a minute. So we've got Mars very near to the ascendant. It's in the 12th, 4 planets in the 12th. The 12th is the hidden house. It's the house of hermits. They're wanting to go off and to be on your own. And that's in a juxtaposition to what she does every day. And one of her latest videos, she says she's just going to be, I think it's Reddit or there's some other platform she's going to be on where she can say what she likes. Yeah. And it's sad that somebody would want to involve themselves with what the internet wants you to do. So the algorithms, where they're called, love it when somebody loses it because it makes it go higher up in your feed. So she's actually feeding into because she says that she's independent minded and all this. She's not. She's feeding into the algorithm that wants you to be cross, wants to click. She's sort of been taken over by the clickbait thing. Yeah. And then she says she doesn't care for the fact that people don't like what she does. And you just think there's not one nice thing that she's capable of saying. So if she's not saying it out aloud in her podcast, in her YouTube channel, she's not saying it out loud, she's not going to hear nice things either. And this is why, so talking to people that, talking to you now, you're listening to a podcast, you're going to be predominantly audio orientated. I am orientated to audio, and I play the piano and I sing and I play various different musical instruments. I like sounds. I've always enjoyed my podcast, absolutely love it, and I've joked about it before. I like listening. I like the sound of my own voice. Ha ha ha. But you have to do a podcast, you have to like the sound of your own voice, because if you wear headphones, which I do, you hear your voice coming back to you. And if you were, which you're not, but she is, broadcasting constantly these, and they're not snippets, some of them are 20-30 minutes, and she's just obnoxiously rude, and then thinks in some ways that has some sort of value, The stuff she sells, as I say, is cheap tat. It's plated. Okay, maybe the colours are pretty, but it's where is the value for her? So if we're looking at value, we've got to look at second house. We've got Neptune, retrograde, Jupiter, retrograde. Jupiter's in Capricorn, and retrograde Jupiter's not happy in the sign of Capricorn. I mean, she's born during the Indigo era, but I'd say she's a really bad example of an Indigo. I tend to like Indigo charts. Oh, it's a lovely, like, I wouldn't want this woman within, I'm glad she's in America, not in the UK. Yeah. But yeah, so the house of value, so we've got Jupiter there. Apparently she does this so that she can make money. I don't know, but I think it's a form of mental illness. And why do I think that? Because she's been under the influence of Uranus for a long amount of time. So if we go back to when Uranus first did something, because she's got a bad relationship with Uranus in her chart anyway, because her Uranus is in the sign of Saggy, and it doesn't aspect anything in her chart, and it's retrograde in her first house. So she's utilised some of that good energy, that she has gone to other countries, she is bilingual, she can speak other languages. But Uranus in a person's first house, if someone's losing it, which I believe she is, look to see where their own Uranus is, and also where is Uranus today, because if there's ever a planet that's going to knock your mental health out, it's going to be the outer ones. It's very, very rare for a faster moving planet like Venus or Mars to affect mental health. It's going to be something a bit more, well, mental health issues, depending on what type of mental health issues they are. It's 9 times out of 10 going to be Uranus. And she's a sun sign Taurus. They don't like lots of change. Sun conjunct Venus. They don't want lots of change. And there is a lot of change going on. And it doesn't... I can't tell you the amount of Taurians that are in contact with me. It's a lot. And the transit of Uranus... So every time it gets near to... This is Taurian people now. Their Mercury or their sun sign. Bing! I get an appointment. Yeah, it's not an energy that Uranus isn't happy at all being in the sign of Taurus. It's earthquakes and everything to do with the earth and suddenness. So, I don't know that it would affect things like the Helen storm that they've had in the US. I don't think that's Uranus in Taurus. It's the earth. The earth is being blown apart. The earth is sudden change. So I think of it more as things like volcanoes or sinkholes, that type of stuff. But Uranus isn't enjoying its transit through the sign of Taurus. There's nothing that you can connect with it. Uranus not deep change. Uranus is sudden change, and Taurus is stability. So now the Taurians, their stability's gone out the window. And I've talked before about my very good friend who had a stroke when Uranus was exactly conjunct. I can't remember if it was a Mercury now or a Sun sign, but Uranus was exactly conjunct. She was under a lot of stress at the time. But that was sudden, and Taurians do not respond well to something sudden. They're better off with slow boil rather than microwave. Okay, so that's her second house, and then so she's supposedly making an income doing what she's doing. Ranting when, sorry, there was a noise outside the room. Them getting excited when supposedly her income is being stifled. But because of the other planets that aren't aspecting anything, so the Sun is conjunct Venus and the Sun is opposition Mars, and the Sun is conjunct Chiron. Says it's conjunct Chiron, but it's way out of orb. 7, 8, 9. No, it's just in orb. I'd say this was a masochist's chart, somebody that likes to torment themselves, but they're going to project that onto other people. So the Sun really, the Sun in Taurus, hasn't got much of a relationship with anything else in her chart. The Sun is opposition to Mars, and Mars is action, aggression, energy, but hidden in the 12th. So there's not going to be an acknowledgement. What we got in the 12th takes us a long time to find out the answers to. It's hidden. What you got in your 12th is concealed. It's not revealed to you. And when you explore your 12th house, and trust me, there's been lots of people that have written brilliant books on 12th house. If you've got 12th house planets, for goodness sakes, read them. Get an understanding of what you got in your 12th, because you're just not going to display those things. And also what you've got in your 12th, don't share with others. And there's her every day sharing her inverted commas opinion. Who gives about her opinion? Okay, big deal. You're shouting into the desert. You, Alexandra, no one, not even yourself, is going to hear, because she's not listening to herself. You can tell she isn't. It's just potty mouth, yeah? Okay, that's second house. But Uranus in her chart only makes inconjuncts. So she's got an unaspected Uranus. So that's a time bomb. Bloom, 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 bloom. So when Uranus first conjuncted in her chart, so let's get the date for that. So around about 2017, Uranus was getting near to her Mercury. She hit the big time in 2021. I'm not going to look at the transits of that, but she's been under the influence of Uranus, a planet that she has no relationship with since this has started in 2017. I haven't done the whole of her history. I don't want to do too much about it because it was rather tiresome. But 2017 is when Uranus started its transit, and she's still under it. So I've got today's transits, I think. I've got the transits for when she last made a YouTube video, which was 11 days ago, on the 2nd of October, and Uranus is now retrograding, so it's not over for her. Uranus is now 26 degrees and her sun sign's 23. It's going to retrograde. I think it retrogrades until the end of the year. So I'm just imagining this person is a client of mine. Obviously I wouldn't be broadcasting it, but yeah, the year ends with it still retrograding. Next year, goodness me, it's not going to get any better. And that poor baby that she's given birth to, it doesn't come out of retrograde until the end of January next year. You know, my advice was go and check yourself into a retreat. Forget about doing your podcasts and your YouTubes and whatever. And when she did her last rant, which was the 2nd of October, Pluto is retrograding. And that's at 29 degrees. Now I expect, because she's already got a relationship with Pluto, so there is some conversation going on there, but Uranus is unaspected and is a sitting bomb. Neptune's got a trine. Mars does things in her chart. But yeah, outer planetary wise, Uranus is a ticking time bomb. And so this is her now experiencing what Uranus is all about. Now, the nice thing about Uranus is when it first starts its transit, oh, it's terribly exciting. Let's do this. Let's go here. But if you are an earth sign, which she is, a lot of Uranus is exhausting. I've got Taurian clients that are going through divorces, house moves. The ones that are involved in divorces is financial always. When a Taurus divorces, I think she's married twice. I've got no idea who she's married to at the moment. But the concern for a Taurus when they divorce is who's going to get what financial wise. They will hang on in. And I know someone who is a Taurus who's divorcing from a Taurus, and the pair of them are falling out the most about who gets what financially wise, and it's costing them loads of money. It's like, why not just go right down the middle, do it half, and it'll save you loads. But yeah, now I did do the date of when they gave birth. Don't know what time of day the child was born or where or anything, so I was interested to see what planets they've got, what sun sign they are. So they are also a Taurus, and they are born with Sun Taurus, Venus Taurus, Jupiter Taurus, and their Mercury is also in Aries like their mother. And and they have such a one-sided chart. So this is a person with a seesaw chart, and the seesaw takes up only 4 signs of the zodiac. There's a very, very narrow view of life when you've only got, or 4 or 5, beg your pardon, because you've got 5 signs of the zodiac in your chart. Definitely need to travel more. But babies, Jupiter is conjunct to Uranus, but they're going to grow up with mummy with a potty mouth. But, and this is the big but, baby has moon in Pisces and Saturn in Pisces, and I don't think, the only planet the baby's got retrograding is Pluto, and luckily Pluto's into Aquarius when they were born, which was earlier on this year. So there's a plus point. However, their 2 Plutos are going to square to each other, so I don't know how baby's going to get on with mum, but generally speaking, if you're born with a moon in Pisces, your relationship to your mother needs to be gentle and quiet and imaginative, etc. So if you're born with that quantity of planets retrograde and you're born in the 80s, then do get in touch with me. Is your life similar, the same to this particular Alexandra Pierce? She goes by the YouTube name is HRH Collection. I don't know what that stands for. Her Royal Highness or something. That she's selling the cheap tat. I've sold cheap tat. I was in my early 20s and worked for a company called Chain by the Inch, and they were American. I was based in a branch of Debenhams selling it, and the chain was on a rack, and you cut off what you wanted for the person and you reinforce the point. It's triple plated in 22 karat gold. Triple plated is no better than single plated, but it sounded good. And of course, after an amount of time it wears off, so it's fine if you just want to go to a party tonight. But if you want, I mean, it depends, everybody's got a different attitude towards jewellery. Jewellery can just be an in the moment thing, but this stuff was probably better than maybe other stuff, I don't know, but it was quite funny selling it. You'd get a bloke coming out, get a massive big chain one way around his neck, and my job then was to cut the quantity of chain they needed and to add the hooks on it so they could wear the flipping stuff. But it was all Blarney, basically. I was born under the Blarney stone, so you talk them into it. I can sell fridges to Eskimos, or even freezers for that matter. It was cheap tat. Triple plate and 22. And of course, if anybody brought it back and it had, I don't know how that happened, sir. Let me give you a full refund and a 10% discount or whatever. But yeah. So we've been talking today about Alexandra Pierce. She has various other pseudonyms. If you've got a Scorpio ascendant, social media isn't going to be a helpful thing, because the majority of people, the Scorpio ascendant, I did happen to ask that once on my Instagram account, anybody got Scorpio ascendant, and only 1 or 2 people replied, and they weren't very active on there. And the disadvantage to social media is this particular person is looking at herself and talking to her own image, and this stuff is coming out of her mouth. And you sort of think those words will resonate somewhere with someone, and are resonating with yourself. Do you really want to be promoting awful, harmful words that aren't pretty? I definitely come from the department of say nice things. My mother used to tell us, if you can't think of something nice to say, don't say anything. And I used to resent that, because we'd argue a lot as kids. If you haven't got anything to say, don't say anything. And actually now I'm older, I think she's got a point. It's constant. I mean, this is about kids arguing, this is to stop us bickering. But now that I'm in my firm old age, I think people are happier that say nice things to themselves and to others, and especially on podcasts. I mean, I do listen to Byron Katie's podcast, and she's a genius. And I love the way that she's, I mean, in Scorpio, I love the way she works with her listeners to resolve an issue with them, and she'll go deep. And she's not nasty to them. She's helping them understand that they have created the world that they're living in their minds, because she challenges their thoughts, and I'm in agreement with that. But from an outsider looking in that doesn't understand what she's up to, you think, oh my God, she's been so cruel to this person. And it isn't cruel, because 9 times out of 10 what people think, if people walked around and their thoughts were broadcast, which can be done now on social media, how awful is that world? You know, your leaders of countries that are killing other people in other countries, what's going on in their heads? If you're in the forces, what's going on in your mind when you release a bomb onto a country? That's not fluffy, kind stuff. And I'm in complete agreement with Eckhart Tolle when he says, sorry, now I'm ranting, Eckhart Tolle when he says that the world, that the earth is beautiful. It's a beautiful place. But what goes on inside people's minds is disaster. So hopefully when Pluto goes back into Aquarius and moves a little further, maybe the emphasis will be on the opposite of destruction. And how will it affect this generation? So if you're born in the 80s and you're born like she is, 0 degrees Pluto, 0 degrees Scorpio, retrograde. You're born right on the cusp of Pluto changing sign, and her daughter is also, but her daughter's Pluto's a little bit further on, it's 2 degrees, but you're born on the beginning of a lengthy transit. So I'm not condemning this particular lady, but I think it would be helpful for a person to understand their chart. But equally, don't put out onto the internet what you wouldn't want to listen to in your bed all nicely snuggled up at 2 a.m. Never, never, never put anything onto the internet that you would at later point in time either regret or wouldn't want to hear whispering into your mind in the early hours of the morning. You'd want something to be nice and soothing. So today we've been looking at this particular lady's chart. It was prompted by the fact that there are a lot of retrograde planets at the moment. I'm always interested in retrogrades because we covered it with Gregory Rozek in 2 episodes of the podcast, and he's an expert in it. So I hope you have a fab week. I'm working on getting the next webinar together. Keep your fingers crossed for me. We're going to visit for the 2nd time a rescue dog. So this would be my first dog. Previous dog was all the girls. I've always had girl dogs, but this is a boy dog, so he's a dog, not a bitch dog. And I mean bitch as in female dog, not swearing there. So send me some positive vibes. We're seeing him for the 2nd time on Monday, and we're taking it slowly, because I would just bring him home, I'd shove him in the car and bring him back. But we're taking it slowly, so that's difficult for somebody like myself. So I hope you have a fab week, and I'll be back next week. Bye bye now.